Coming up on Newswatch in Focus, with drought conditions continuing, many local businesses are feeling the heat, while others say it's still business as usual. We'll talk to a lawn care company owner and a real estate agent in our studios tonight about how the drought is affecting them. And we'll take a look at what made headlines this week on WEIU Newswatch. All that and more is coming up, so stay tuned. Newswatch in Focus starts right now. Welcome and thanks for joining us for Newswatch in Focus. I'm your host, Kate Pleasant. Newswatch in Focus takes an in-depth look at the latest news stories from the greater Mattoon and Charleston area, as well as those surrounding it each week. Our topic this week is how the drought is affecting some local businesses. Some say it's been hard on them, while others say it's still a pretty typical summer. We'll find out more when we talk to our in-studio guests in just a few minutes, but first, let's take a look at what made headlines this week on WEIU Newswatch. A vehicle fire has led to two arrests in Marshall. Officials say both 41-year-old Robert Snavely and 42-year-old Michael Poland of Marshall were arrested and charged with arson after a vehicle fire took place on Sunday. An investigation is being conducted by the Illinois State Police, Fire Marshal, and the Marshall Police Department. And turning to the ag world, crop insurance is a safety net for farmers and can save them from having to give up or sell their land during this severe drought. Newswatch's Kristen Leone talked to a local farmer and a farm loan manager this week who both say that if you're part of the 80% of Illinois farmers that are covered, the chances of losing your acres are rare.
For many crop producers, their farmland is all they have to thrive on. And Effingham farmer Robert Utel says his acres of corn are a pricey part of his livelihood.
It's expensive. I mean, lands really went up in the last three to 4 years.
And because farming is his major source of income, Robert purchases crop insurance just in case. But for those farmers who aren't insured, the drought may be drying out their bank accounts and leaving them with no choice but to sell or give up their land.
The bank can come in, or your lender can come in and shut you down or force you to sell off a percentage to cover the debt or cover some of the debt.
So for farmers who can no longer afford to make their payments, farm loan manager Chris Walsh says there's an emergency loan program they can qualify for during a drought disaster.
There's always going to be somebody in financial stress. I mean, there's always that 5% that's struggling, good times and in bad. I don't see a wide range of foreclosures happening. I mean, we can try to work with each individual to get them to be a successful farmer.
But again, farmers without crop insurance or who have a history of poor credit may have a harder time qualifying for the program.
If you did and you were out on a line, it could put the hurts on you real quick.
Crop insurance is going to be a strong safety net for farmers that carried, the 70 to 85% coverage.
In the past couple of years, high corn and soybean yields have actually driven up land values, but because of the current drought conditions, the price of farmland has dropped by an average of $1,500, ranging from roughly $6,000 to $8,000 per acre. Farm officials advise farmers not to sell their land anytime soon, since this one bad year shouldn't affect their entire livelihood. And as the drought and scorching temperatures continued, Governor Pat Quinn is reaching out for assistance. The governor has sent a letter to the Secretary of Agriculture asking for disaster designations for nearly all counties in Illinois. If granted, the counties would then be eligible for special U.S. Department of Agriculture grants and loan programs. 30 Illinois counties already have disaster designation. And with temperatures reaching over 100 degrees this week, firefighters are addressing burning safety and asking the public to monitor their grills and cigarettes closely. A local porch fire at a Mattoon home is the reason why fire officials say improperly putting out a cigarette in this hot and dry weather is not a good idea. Newswatch's Kristen Leone is back and has more on this story.
Well, a friend of ours called us. We were at a Catholic Charities, and she's the one who called us and says, "Hey, your house is on fire."
For Troy Davis, this was no ordinary fire. He was caught off guard when he found out the front porch of his Lakeland Estates mobile home was burning up.
The chief of the fire department determined it was started by a cigarette that wasn't put out properly.
The fire was caused by the improper disposal of smoking materials. Oftentimes people will step out on their front porches and they'll light a cigarette, and unfortunately in this situation the occupant didn't get the cigarette out like he thought he had.
Davis says his mobile home should have been completely burned to the ground, but damage was limited to the front porch area. Now he's sweeping the debris and starting off on a clean slate to make sure his family is safe and this doesn't happen to them again.
So I usually sit on the front porch and smoke when I do smoke, but after that, no, not no more.
Because there's still a burn ban in Mattoon, Assistant Fire Chief Sean Youngie says residents should not be burning flammable materials when it's this hot and dry out. He says residents should also be mindful of where they toss their cigarette butts.
You know, we just want to encourage people to recognize, due to the high heat, no rain, everything is so dry out there. So it's important that they take the extra steps and precautions to make sure their cigarettes are put out.
We got really lucky for the simple fact, I mean, it could have been 10 times worse.
Youngie says it's important to know that unless the area sees a significant amount of rainfall, the burn ban will continue to take effect in Mattoon. He also says the fire department is discussing whether to add a disposing of smoking material regulation to their ban. And one activity that's not suffering from the heat is fishing. Newswatch's Amanda Richardson was at Lake Shelbyville this week, where the fish were still biting.
With clear skies and warm days, fishermen are being lured to the lakes to escape the heat.
Well, the fishing's been really good. The heat's just, but out on the lake you get a nice breeze.
And that means although lake levels may be down, bait sales are up.
We're selling a ton of bait still. We have minnows, waxworms, earthworms, redworms, and chicken livers. So we're selling it all.
But when conditions get this hot, it's not just losing bites fishermen need to be worried about, it's losing bait too.
It's real hard to keep your bait in good shape, and that's really the key to catching fish.
As long as they keep it cool, keep cool water on it, you can put ice cubes in it to keep it cool. Worms, you just put them in your cooler, keep them cold, then they'll do just fine.
I have a big 15-gallon tank on the boat that's just for bait. It's insulated, it's round. You don't want to use a square tank because minnows will run in their nose into the corners and stress themselves. And then you have to have a lot of air on them, and you have to have cooler water in them. So we run about 50-degree water in it.
So if you're headed out on the boat, it's important to keep both your pole and your cooler in hand.
Bring plenty of water and plenty of Gatorade, and don't be afraid to take your shirt off and put it in the lake and put it back on. Feels pretty good.
In Shelbyville, I'm Amanda Richardson for WEIU Newswatch.
As water levels continue to decrease, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources is warning residents to use caution while out on the lake. The department says with water levels this low, there's an increased risk of damage at boat ramps if the proper precautions are not taken. Residents are also urged to use caution while passing through lakes and rivers because shallow water is making certain paths difficult to navigate. They say some boaters have become stranded because of low water levels. And finally tonight, the drought is affecting realtors and other local businesses. We'll talk to representatives from a few local businesses next about how they've been affected and what they're doing to combat the drought. But first, here's a few of the related stories from the Newswatch team.
The heat is causing officials at Oakland Pool and 18th Street Garden Shop in Charleston to make many changes to their daily routine because of the high heat and no rain.
Definitely different. I mean, several summers we've had before now, we've had rain problems where it rained so much that, it was just hard to even get any swimming time in and get pools in and everything else. But now it's just a drought and we're on the other end now.
For this pool business, it's the customers who are feeling the financial burden of the heat.
They're having a lot more pool problems this year just because of the drought. It's just sucking out the chlorine in their pools and they're turning green easier. So we're seeing a lot more problems, and so we're busier.
Right through it. And local pools are seeing less swimmers because of high temperatures.
Basically more effects of the heat. Our crowd goes down because of the heat, just because we got a lot of concrete. The crowd that comes are usually young and they stay in the pool.
Pools range anywhere right now from 92 up to about 98. The pool water is very hot, feels like almost like a hot tub.
So to keep cool, the pool needs...
There's a lot of evaporation when it's so hot, so we have to run a little more each day, so we put in cold water, of course, and also there's a lot of splashing going on, so what we have to replace each day, of course, we're replacing with cool water.
The pool industry is seeing positives and negatives, but local greenhouses have had to water down their options.
We slowed down quite a bit. We had a really early spring, so that was great for business, but July usually slows down typically in this business, but it's a really slow July with this drought. People don't want to plant, the ground is too hard, so we've really slowed down.
Hunter says the steps she's taking to save her business are paying off. She hopes the fall season will bring more rain, which will also lead to more customers and business.
Realtors told me today there are 3 steps a buyer takes before they even step foot inside a home. Buyers will first look at the house on the internet, then drive by, then set up an appointment with a realtor. So you could probably say that a good first impression is everything when it comes to a real estate. But lately, Mother Nature is not making selling a home very easy.
The curb appeal is critical for selling properties. However, I think people must have gotten used to the dry weather because July has been a pretty good month. The market generally is good in Coles County.
Which means people are still buying, despite the conditions of hundreds of lawns in Coles County.
We've been very fortunate in this area. We're certainly not in the kind of situation others have been.
That doesn't mean realtors aren't focusing on other areas in order to attract those potential buyers.
The more growing, living sorts of things that are there, the better.
Advice Chris Vaught took from her realtor, which led to her selling her home in less than 2 months.
Just to make it real neat, no weeds, trim around everything, you know, just to make flowers. We always wanted it to look nice, you know, and green.
So the less they have to imagine, the better off that seller is going to be.
Wonder where we get our story inspirations from? Make sure to tune in to Newswatch every weeknight at 5:30 right here on WEIU to find out. Newswatch in Focus takes a local story from the week that was featured on Newswatch and goes more in depth. For more local news, weather, and sports, tune in to Newswatch every weeknight at 5:30. We're back now with Scott Bierman, the owner of Pro-Mow Lawn Care in Charleston, and Doug Stanberry, an agent with All American Realty here in Charleston. And gentlemen, first, can you tell us how the drought is affecting your individual businesses? We'll start with Scott.
As far as lawn care is concerned, we're just not doing as many services as normal. Instead of mowing, you know, once a week or every 2 weeks, it's more like every 5 or 6 weeks. And even then, we're just knocking down weeds. So just the, you know, keeping my employees busy is probably the biggest one. And other than that, just, you know, trying to keep the customers happy with what we can do.
Okay, and what about you, Doug? What about real estate?
We really haven't seen any negative effect on the drought so far as marketing our homes.
Okay.
I've only had one prospective seller ask me that question if I thought that would keep the home from selling or make the house not show as well, but we really haven't had any reaction from any buyers with a concern about the way the lawns look as far as to make a decision about whether they're going to buy the home or not.
Sure, and it'd probably be pretty universal. You know, everyone's landscaping looks that way right now. So, so you just had the one, so it's not a concern then?
At this point, it is not.
Okay, so people, curb appeal is good enough.
I guess the house is, you know, of course in the springtime, that's when the busiest time of the year is for our market.
Right.
Because everything is green and lush and you know, we're coming off of a dead winter. But I really can't say that this is having a negative effect on our market.
Okay, and so would you say you're about the same as you were last year in regards to summer sales?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Because this is a slower time of the year anyway. So
it typically is. I mean, usually our best time of the year is the first half of the year. Okay. We find that when we get into July being a big vacation month for many people, they're not looking that much. We're in a very busy closing mode usually in July. We usually close a lot of transactions in the month of July of homes that have sold in the last 30 to 45 days.
Okay. So busy with that as usual. Okay. Yes. And so Scott, Are you getting calls from your customers that are concerned about the dryness?
A few of them. Most of them, I think, have just come to the conclusion that they say their yard's dead. It's not dead. It's probably dormant.
Okay. Can you explain that? You know, the difference between dead and dormant. You know, because that's what I think when I go out and I'm like, it's all dead, and that's what people say. It's dead. My yard's dead.
That's everyone's natural reaction to
Mm-hmm.
that is just that it's dead because it's brown.
Right.
But you can't really tell until it greens back up. Okay. Grass has a natural, and trees and shrubs, they all have a, their defense mechanism is to go dormant first.
Okay.
Obviously, if the drought continues into September, you're probably going to lose some of it.
Okay.
But you won't know that until you get a bunch of rain and things green up to really know for sure.
Okay. Because when would they normally green back up?
September.
September. That's
usually because August
time.
It always goes dormant on a normal year, and then about 1st of September into October things green back up and it's back to normal.
Okay, so we've just been seeing that happen a little earlier this year than normal.
Yeah, about 2 months earlier.
2 months, which is a lot. So what about when you're out and people, obviously my yard's dead, like you just explained the difference between dead and dormant. What about the little green patches of grass? I mean, I've seen those when you drive by in your yard. You're like, how did they get that little green patch of grass in there? What's that about?
It's either a weed or tall fescue. And tall fescue is just a type of grass that does really well in the heat summer months, where bluegrass and ryegrass will go dormant with lack of water and everything. But tall fescue is it grows in clumps. I call it barnyard grass because that's just what it is. But it does really well.
Okay, but it's not the kind of thing desirable to plant your entire lawn in,
No,
right?
not in particular, no.
Okay, it's not as soft and lawn looking, I guess you would say.
It grows in clumps.
Okay, so I assume you've had to reduce the amount of crew that you've had on, is that true?
Yeah, we've probably laid off since about the 1st of June, probably close to half or so of my employees, and I just try to keep as many of them busy with little other renovation jobs or whatever type of services and jobs and stuff that come up that we're able to do. I just call them in. They're all on call.
Okay.
And I just try to do what I can for them because I know they've got families and stuff too.
Sure. And so what kinds of services are they doing right now? What are you getting calls about?
A lot of like landscape renovations. People, not necessarily ripping the dead stuff out that's dead already, but resetting landscape block, brick around the edging, somebody wanting to do, more renovation type stuff with new rock and maybe some dirt fill, knowing that we won't do any seeding or some of the other plantings and stuff like that till we get rain. But just, mainly it's like landscape renovation type jobs.
Okay. And are you finding time now to do things that you don't normally have time to do in the middle of summer? Is that what you're seeing a lot?
Yeah, a lot of it, if they've got a brush pile that's been sitting and, our current customers know that they, if there's stuff around the house that they want done, they're more likely to call now because they know the bind that we're in.
Right.
And a lot of them, they feel bad for us.
So there's some support out there.
Yeah, they call us. Normally I do it myself, but if you guys want to come and take care of it, that's fine.
That's good. So you're trying to keep the guys as busy as you can. So, okay. And Doug, is there anything you can recommend for people that are wanting to sell their homes right now? Is there anything they can do in lieu of having this, curb appeal problem if they do?
Declutter and price the house right.
Okay. Because the market's fine, so just do what you normally.
Sure, which is our advice anytime. When you asked Scott about the green patches, and I suppose we could say that this would be a good time if you're buying a country property. You could really tell where the septic system is, because this should be really green. We were out on a listing this morning that out in the front yard there was a green patch, probably about the size of this table. So we asked the seller, well, what's going on there? And they said, well, they had grandchildren here back a month ago with a little pool. So and when they emptied the pool. So it's still green, though, from like a few weeks ago.
Okay, so people that are watering might actually see a little green staying.
Yeah, we really haven't recommended people to excessively water their lawn or anything because it can be pretty expensive if they can do it.
Right.
So no, it really fortunately has not been an issue for our homeowners.
Okay, well that's good.
Yeah.
Are you seeing a lot of people watering, Scott? Have you
not a lot of it. People with irrigation systems are running them, but even then, you got to outweigh the cost. Is it worth it? I mean, they're running it basically just enough to keep the yards alive. Although they're not lush green like they normally would be, because it's been dry for so long. It just takes so much water to keep them somewhat, keep them alive versus going dormant.
Right.
So most of them are running it just a few days a week, just enough to do that.
Okay, and so have you had any calls about irrigation systems then, since that's a little more popular this year? Or is it kind of
we don't do any installation of them, but I do know another landscape company that has had a lot more calls this year.
So people are trying to keep what they have alive, in other words.
Yeah, but again, it's a personal opinion. Is it worth the extra money? This is just a rare year.
Right. Yeah, and so that's another thing I was going to ask you. You've been in lawn care business for a while. Is this one of the worst years you've had, or is it kind of similar to another?
2010 was similar, but not near this bad. Where back in 2010, I think we got plenty of rain up till about June, 1st of June, somewhere in there, and then it kind of stopped raining until September. And then we had other problems, fungus and stuff like that then, whereas this year it never really rained all year.
To get to that
point,
right.
I mean, we're several inches, 20 inches below normal.
Right, and we're not catching up anytime
No,
soon. It doesn't appear to be that way. So, Doug, when you're out and about, are you starting to see things that are, drought related, since you see a lot of homes and things like that? Have you had any, because some homes have trouble with pests and things like that right now with droughts?
We haven't yet. In years past, though, when we've had dry years, we have seen problems with foundations or with basement walls when the ground is so dry that it can sometimes crack.
Right.
Around foundations. We've not seen that. Actually, we have more problems when we have too much rain.
Really?
As far as the real estate market is concerned, because in our area we have a high water table, so it's very common in February, March, in the spring, when we have excess rain, we have a lot of dampness and crawl spaces.
Okay.
And I mean, there are many times when we'll be selling a home and we have to get a termite inspection done, and the inspector can't get in a crawl space because there's too much water there.
Okay.
So really we have more, as far as the real estate market is concerned, we have more problems when we have too much rain than not enough.
Okay.
So.
Well, do you ever see any problems, heat related? Do you think less people are maybe looking to move or anything right now because it's kind of hot?
I don't. Well, maybe a few people that are really not highly motivated to buy.
Right.
They're just, we'll just wait till it cools off.
Sure.
But I've had some people just complaining about the heat.
Sure.
And, too hot to get out to
Right.
look at a property. But those people are, like I said, they're not very motivated. They're
Right.
not in a situation where they have to have a home in 30 days. If they're in a situation like that, the heat
They'll
won't
go
bother
ahead,
them.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about your guys that are working, Scott? Are you having to do extra things due to the heat? I mean, are you sending extra water or?
Yeah, they've all got like 5-gallon water jugs they take with
Okay.
them, and I try to bring them Gatorade or bottled water throughout the day. Just when it's 100 plus for consecutive days, some of the work they're doing, it's strenuous. But we're working more 6 a.m. to noon or 1 shifts to try to beat the heat.
Sure.
So they're not putting in full 8-hour days, but they're still getting off early to get ahead of the heat. And
do a little adjusting there to keep people safe. Yeah. So that makes sense. Okay. And Doug, we were talking earlier a little bit about farmland sales, and maybe some of this drought's having an effect on that. What are you seeing from a real estate perspective as far as farmland goes?
Well, we're kind of seeing the opposite of what most people will think. We're actually seeing land values increasing even more. Yeah, I was talking to a broker over the weekend, and he told me he was going to be taking an offer on a 450-acre tract. His bid was going to be $14,500 an acre.
Wow.
What
is the normal going price right now?
Coles County, I know we've had some sales around $10,500, maybe a little bit higher than that this year, which is an all-time high.
Right.
So.
And you would think with dry land that people might want to pay less, but that's not the case.
It's the opposite. I think because the price of corn is going to go through the roof, that's why people are snapping up the land.
Okay.
So.
All right. So before we close here tonight, guys, is there anything else that you think people need to know? I mean, obviously, lawn care business is hurting. So any advice you have for people with lawns, real estate at this point in time?
Yeah, I mean, overall, as far as your lawn and landscape goes, just try to water as much as possible. If it's not feasible due to the cost or, the location, how big your yard is or whatever, don't freak out until a lot of times your bushes and trees and shrubs and the grass, there's a chance it's all going to come back. If it doesn't,
so don't go stripping it all out right now.
Yeah, don't go start ripping it out now.
Okay.
Wait till the fall, whenever we start getting rain. If it doesn't come back, then look at maybe doing something next spring.
Okay. Would you recommend staying off the grass too? Because I know you can break it, right? I mean.
Yeah, if you can walk across your yard and it crunches, then you're better off not driving anything across it, because then you will kill the grass.
Okay, so mowing is probably not ideal right now. There's probably not much to mow anyway.
Yeah, not
so,
really.
Okay.
Do more just weed eating the tall areas around along the edges and stuff where the weeds and stuff tend to be.
Okay, and what about you, Doug? Any tips?
Well, as far as the drought and the market, not really, but the interest rates are still at an all-time low. So it's a great time to buy. And there's good inventory out there. Interest rates are down around in the 3s and below. So it's a great time to buy a home.
Okay, so we've got the opposite end of the spectrum here, lawn care versus real estate, which is doing okay. So we thank you, gentlemen, for coming on Newswatch in Focus today, Scott Bierman and Doug Stanberry, and we hope you'll join us again next week. We're out of time for this week, but coming up next is the Four Rivers Ag Report with Fred Peralta, so that we hope you'll stay tuned for that. And we'll see you next time here on Newswatch in Focus. I'm your host, Kate Pleasant. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in to Newswatch in Focus. Is there a news story happening in your community? Let us know about it. You can email our newsroom at news@weiu.net. Call us at 581-2911 or write to us at 600 Lincoln Avenue, Charleston, Illinois 61920.